watched your film last night and definitely enjoyed it. It was beautifully done. So kudos on that. I guess so my first question is, how does it feel? Well, it's kind of a two-part question. So part one, how does it feel having your feature directorial debut premiere at Sundance? And then the second part is, how does it feel to have it premiere at Sundance during the pandemic?
Well, it's an extraordinary honor to be chosen for Sundance. It reaffirms what we'd hoped would be true about this project, which was that we could tell a very specific story from one of the smallest corners of the world, and people far flung from the Maltese Islands would find it resonant and would understand the very human dilemmas that are at the center of the story. Malta has a very limited track record in making feature films. This is one of the very few that's ever been made. So there was not a lot of precedence before us, but we stuck to our convictions and believed that if we made the film very small in a way, it would become very big. And that's the truth's borne out by being part of this amazing festival that's really synonymous with the very best in independent film. And this year, I mean, I think it's an even greater honor to be part of the Sundance selection, because their slate is smaller this year, so it's normally competitive. And this year, I think audiences can rest assured that the films selected by Sundance are really amongst the very best that were on offer. So I'm all the more proud of the accomplishments of my cast and crew in making it into this very competitive year. The last thing I'll add is that it's extraordinarily exciting to think that new kinds of audiences are going to find Sundance films. Because we have a largely virtual format, anyone from anywhere around the country for the price of a movie ticket can beam into Sundance without the cost prohibitive factors like travel or lodging that can be limiting. So it's inspiring to think of different kinds of people finding these films on their initial premieres.
Yeah, definitely. So you kind of touched on this already, but what drew you to this story and why did you want to tell this story in particular?
Well, just a little bit about myself. My parents emigrated from Malta in the late 80s. So I was born and raised here. We always kept very close connection to the island and tried to get back as often as we could because that's where the rest of our family still was. And as long as we'd been coming and going from Malta, the islands just always inspired my creative side. I think it has something to do with being both an insider and an outsider. Puts you in a good position, I think, as a storyteller. So because I loved my family's homeland, but had a lot of curiosity about it, it made me want to learn more and lean in. So love and curiosity, I think, are really valuable to a storyteller, and I had that all the time with Malta. As long as I wanted to make films, I knew that I wanted to make them in Malta. I strangely never thought about doing it anywhere else. It just it seemed to kind of close some kind of circle for me personally,
Right.
to practice um, my profession and my artistic uh, aspirations, and also kind of make sense of my place in the world and my connection to my family's homeland. So that's the story has kind of the film has two lineages. One, you could say that the film has been in development as long as I've been alive, but in a more practical sense, the film was something I've been working on for the last 4 years. I'd always been interested from afar in the world of traditional fishermen in Malta. I had no connection to fishing prior to starting this film. I'd never even gone fishing in my life, and am prone to getting seasick.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it wasn't the most natural subject matters, but I just wanted to know more. And when I started talking to these old guys, and a lot of them are getting up there in age, what I found was that they were also, like me, questioning their heritage and what would be passed on to the next generation. Something that I thought a lot about as a first generation American, but they were coming at it from the opposite end, in which they wanted to stop this craft that had been passed down through generations from going any further. they saw the writing on the wall, just the headwinds that were facing this industry, be it from uh, regulations to climate change to unfair market circumstances. It's an extraordinarily tough world for the fishermen, and many were determined to see that their sons did not inherit this thing that had been going on for centuries in their family. I thought that it was so ripe for a dramatic film and could touch on issues of family and sacrifice, these things that I thought about in my own life. And I just wanted to put that into a film in a very unique cinematic world.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you did. Um, so in terms of like shooting itself, what was it like shooting on location in Malta? And with you also being prone to seasickness, what was it like having to shoot a lot of it on the water?
Well, word to the wise, take your seasickness tablet 24 hours before you go out to sea, and then another right before you go. I missed that memo the first few times around, and always I think had an exaggerated sense of exaggerated confidence in my abilities. There's a key sequence in the film which you might remember. It's about halfway through where the main character Jesmark takes a significant step towards this path into the world of black market fishing.
Mhm.
Uh, we shot on a real industrial fishing boat overnight, and this boat was just spewing fumes of diesel. Combine that with this very high swell, and half of my crew, including myself, were head over the rails, just vomiting into the sea all night. And it just, very, very, but we had, all these pages to get through. I was literally having to kind of dodge my director's monitor in order to throw up. Sorry to be graphic, but I was having to kind of direct through the seasickness, and it was not ideal. I have to credit the people in my crew who remain standing, and one of our actors, um, Uday, who plays a South Asian seafarer, and he was very sick at the beginning of the night, but he knew what we had to get done, and he just got this bolt of energy, and he rallied us, and he just went straight into his performance, and it was so good and so energetic. Like, I don't know, it had some kind of metaphysical effect on us. We just, we picked up our equipment and we just started shooting, and we were right about to call it quits and just go back to shore, and we were going to try to figure out how to fake it, but we didn't have to. And it um, surprised me that it's one of my favorite sequences in the film. And I have a little bit of scar tissue from it, but it'll fade now because I think it's a really special sequence, and we really did it for real.
Yeah, nice. So you mentioned Jesmark. The guy who plays him is not a professional actor. So what was it like having to direct both non-professionals and professional actors simultaneously? And do you think that that kind of made the story um, richer and more interesting?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, it's Jesmark is played by Jesmark. I wrote the film after meeting he and David. I had some kind of script, but I met them and they really inspired me, and I started crafting the characters around who they really were and taking elements from their life and changing them, but putting the script in a way onto a strong footing that these guys could step into it and bring who they really were into the roles. And I love films with non-actors because it really elevates them beyond kind of normal movies. The reality pokes through the edges of the frame. And Jesmark, I mean, I'm so in love with his performance in this film. It's so soulful and so subtle. He really became an extraordinary screen actor. And in a way, the non-actors push the trained actors in a very interesting direction. And it makes my job easier because the the trained actors came to the film not having done anything like this before, so they were very interested in it and very keen to see how it would work. So they were not trying to impose their way of working. And so they started to take their cues from the non actors, and they saw how good it could be on screen. And they started getting on that level of subtlety and working with the physicality a lot more. And just you can be so simple in a film and it can be still very affecting. So I credit my trained cast at the center of those actors. I would say is Michaela Faruja, who's making her screen debut, if you can believe it. She's so good in the role of Denise, but she had basically been in theater her whole life, so she had extraordinary amount of training, but really came to this film ready to learn a new set of skills. And I think she and Jesmark made a really fine pair, and um, I'm really wowed by what she did in this film. She's also very young. I think she was 21 when we shot this, so she's a talent to watch for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, so on this project, you wore a couple of different hats. You were writer, director, editor, and producer. Do you think your work as a producer makes you a better director?
That's a great question. I would uh, I would say that my cross training was mainly in editing. I was editing for about 10 years before this film, and I produced the film by virtue of on a small independent film you just kind of have to do it. I worked with fantastic producers, and I would not want to take away from what they did on the film. And um, those producers are Rebecca Anastasi, who's really the beating heart of this film and really kept it alive. My other partner in Malta is Oliver Malia, and my producer in America is Ramin Barani, an extraordinary director whose film The White Tiger just came out on Netflix, and I think it was the number 2 film on Netflix globally this past weekend. So that group of people was an extraordinary support network to me on this film, and these small independent films are never easy to make. And then add to the fact that Malta really had never made films before. I was a first time director. It takes a village, so I really look to them for as a with a lot of gratitude.
Sure.
Mhm.
So what is it that you hope people really take away from this film?
Well, what I hope they take away is, we have an opportunity in Luzzu to take audiences to Malta, many for the very first time. So that's a great opportunity for us to share not just the island's cinematic beauty, but also reveal aspects of its history and its culture. And that's very special to me. Malta has populated our collective imaginations for as long as we've been watching movies. Some of our favorite blockbuster films are shot in Malta, but it's never playing itself. Films like Gladiator, Troy, World War Z, Munich. So we've been looking at Malta on the silver screen all these times. We just never knew it was Malta, right? It's always studied for somewhere else. Now it gets to play itself and reveal new colors and new sides. And I just really delight in taking people to also to sides of the island that they would never see as a tourist. And it reaffirms, I think, this thing about cinema in general, which is that it really is our universal language, and that you could take this film from, again, this one of the smallest corners of the world, and it can still resonate far away in Park City or wherever we're beaming into. And I find that reality to be very reaffirming as a filmmaker.
So I guess one last question. I know that you're still kind of early in your career, but thinking about your overall career, in the end, what do you hope to leave behind as your legacy? What do you hope people take away from your entire body of work?
It would be a bit presumptuous of me to talk about a body of work at this point, or any kind of legacy. But what I will say is that I'm working on my second film, so one step at a time. And it takes me back to Malta, and it takes me back to a similar way of working with both actors and non-actors, and diving deep into a really fascinating fascinating side of the island that's not even well known on the island itself. And it's so there's some shared DNA with Lutzu,
Mhm.
but in a completely different register, a different tone, and a different kinds of characters. And I really can't wait to get back to Malta once I can get on a plane and, and start getting this thing going.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I definitely appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This was really nice. Appreciate it.